Now, if if you change that first premise of history, if you go with what I'm saying, for example, that actually no, it was a continuous a continuum of warfare and violence, mostly initiated by Islam, which was spreading into and absorbing and conquering the West and other lands. That question, what went wrong, becomes a moot point. It's superfluous because nothing went wrong. We're actually seeing a continuum, right? So I think there's this an impetus to really guard the narrative, the historical. And I'll just give you a very my own personal experience. I've been invited and spoken in various places. The greatest pushback I ever got was when I was talking about history, and that was at the U.S. Army War College. And they just invited me to talk about my book, Sword and Scimitar, which you mentioned, which is history, what I'm saying. And that's the most time that CARE just went ballistic and attacked me. And you would think, big deal, I'm just talking battles, decisive battles, and warfare. And I think the point is they don't want it, because once you realize that Islam was doing what it's been doing for over a millennium, and in fact, what we're seeing today is an identical duplication of that, then you understand nothing went wrong. There's nothing to fix. There's no, but as long as you believe that the history is what the apologists and the Edward Said types want you to believe, okay, then you have to always look for something other than radical Islam to explain what's going on. And so it becomes colonialism, it becomes Israel and Zionism, it becomes, Western machinations, whatever, anything and everything but Islam, because Islam was fine historically. So obviously it's something else. And I think that's a very subtle reason that a lot of the apologists work very hard to guard the historical narrative.
Always been that I'm criticizing both the left and the right wing of politics because they're different manifestations of the same underlying cancer. The right wants to praise Western civilization. And if you ask them what's so great about Western civilization, they'll talk about technocratic liberalism. They'll say that we have all this technology, we have all of this human rights and freedom and democracy, women's rights. So this is just liberalism. There's this practice of usury and usurious loans and capital funding and so forth. So this is actually the problem, or I think the main conflict between capitalism and Islam. So obviously I'm advocating for Islam as a solution, and Islam is a complete way of life that touches on everything from individual decision-making to individual values, but also family values, marital values, societal values, economic law. All of these areas are covered under Sharia and Islamic law, and including, religious practices like worship, rituals, and so forth. This kind of system, or establishing Islam, yes, it does mean a reduction in freedom and equality. But this kind of reduction of freedom and equality is necessary in order to preserve marriage, family, community, religious practice, belief in God. You cannot maintain belief in God if it's possible for apostates or atheists to go around and insult God, to criticize God, to criticize the entire notion of belief. This is something that will destroy religious belief and fundamentally undermine it in society. Understands that there needs to be consequences and punishments or disincentives towards heresy, towards apostasy, in order to maintain the important value of belief in God. If you don't restrict people's freedom, religious freedom in that way, then it leads to a much worse consequence in the loss of belief in God. The term used to be terrorist or terrorist sympathizer or Islamist. Then it became Wahhabi, then it became Salafi. So basically it's come to mean anyone who is a conservative, Orthodox, Sunni Muslim is being labeled as a Salafi, or anyone who teaches or believes that Quran and Hadith are important. This is a Salafi, Wahhabi, Islamist. Okay. So, but I consider myself a Sunni, an Orthodox, conservative Sunni. And, if that's your definition of what a Salafi is, then yeah, I'm a Salafi.
Radical jihadists tonight are calling for the head of Texas free speech event organizer Pamela Geller.
And now this woman wants to draw cartoons or have people draw cartoons to insult the Prophet, knowing full well that this carries the death penalty in Islam.
This is in reference to death. This is that for the sake of the ahad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they gave their lives. They gave everything they had. They gave their existence itself as a gift to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the highest level. You have to remember that there's going to come a time when Allah is going to ask for you. All of us. There's going to come a time when Allah will ask from you. This is an ahad. We have taken an ahad of faith. When the times of reality come, كَانُوا هُمُ الرِّجَالِ, they become men. It's all fun, and when you're with your family and you're joking and you're playing PlayStation with your friends or doing anything else, but then when the jihad comes, when the Prophet calls and says, come now, انفروا خفافا وثقالا, come light and heavy for the jihad, then you see these incredible men. These rijal, when they don't get to give their lives for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then all they're doing is just waiting for the opportunity to do so. Yantadhir is this idea of the present future tense verb, constantly anticipating, waiting, yearning. We want to give our life for the sake of Allah and His Prophet. When is it going to be my turn? Promise of Allah and His Prophet is true. Victory and success for Islam is guaranteed.
We reached the peak in the year 998 of Hijrah. At that time, the Ottomans were leading the world, and they were the major force in the whole world. But they did something wrong, very wrong. They tried for many years to conquer Europe through wars, only wars. While Islam was spreading in the subcontinent, in Indonesia and so on, not by wars. In the northern part of the subcontinent, there were wars, but in the south and Indonesia, Malaysia, so there were no Islamic wars, and Islam spread there, and we have the largest Muslim country, Indonesia, there. While 700 years of our trial to conquer Europe by force failed, did not work. So it was very clear to me that yes, we were in the peak, but in the wrong peak.
Wow.
We are in the peak of power, of military. This is the name of the book, a strategic plan to revive the Ummah. So we should not just work and hope for the revival. Let's plan it. And because that's one of my specialties, strategic planning, I wrote a plan.
Islam teaches us that Islam is supreme. The supremacy of Islam. Not that we want a seat at the table. Not that our whole hope is to stop Islamophobia so that we can just be treated like human beings. No, Islam is supreme. Some of you are younger. You don't remember the days before Imam Khomeini. What did Imam Khomeini do? How did he change history? What were we like before? Why are we so close to the victory once we went back and embraced our Islamic principles? What Imam Khomeini said was that the true victory is training the youth. The victory of all victories is training the youth, human pillars. Individuals like Shahid Qasim Soleimani, Shahid Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, these people were the true miracle of Imam Khomeini. And you've seen what they did, and so many others with Imam Khomeini. His effect has been global. The students of Imam Khomeini, one of them is Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, one of them, right? Train people to become giant killers. The legacy of Imam Khomeini, brothers and sisters, was that we, his sons and daughters, we should, wherever we are, build resistance communities.
One of the main ways that civilization jihad, which is destroying Western civilization from within, the main ways that they're going to win this is that we impose Sharia on ourselves. And for those of you that are thinking, no way, especially here in Texas, I know that Texas attitude will never do that, but I want you to ask yourself a question. Have you or anyone you known ever thought about saying something about Islam, jihad, or Sharia and cut yourself short because it would affect your personal relationships, or it could affect career or business or anything. Because this is happening all over the country. It's happening with law enforcement, where they should be getting training specifically about the enemy's threat doctrine, Sharia, and they're not, because the suit-wearing jihadis that are working with them are showing up to their offices telling them that if they get training that identifies the enemy, whether it's the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda, as a jihadi, then they're going to get blasted, in not so many words I'll say this, they're going to get blasted on national media as an Islamophobic, racist police department. And who wants that, right? So whether it's a chief of police, whether it's a mayor, whether it's a legislator, whether it's a business owner, we are self-imposing Islamic law, Sharia, on ourselves. And I know for time's sake, I wanted to go into a lot more, but there's a couple of things that I want to talk about as far as jihad being total warfare. Total warfare. So whether it's media manipulation, whether it's propaganda, whether it's legislative influence operations, subversive groups, they're going to come at us from every single angle. Now, whether it is a jihadi organization in San Diego that has an anti-bullying program. Has anybody heard about this? San Diego School District brought in CARE, a Hamas organization, and they were going to implement a district-wide anti-bullying campaign that wasn't anti-bullying in general. It was teaching students, teachers, and parents about how to properly treat Muslims so that they don't feel offended in the school district, to the exclusion of every other group. That's happening in the country right now. That's a part of civilization jihad. It's the same thing that the Marxists did decades ago, and I don't have time to go into that today, but let's just say the jihadis would not have made nearly the gains that they've made if it weren't for the Marxist infiltration into our society.